This is the Haulin Assets podcast, where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Haulin Assets podcast. This is episode number 103. Today, we're talking about April 2022 financials. I am Craig, hosting for you today as usual, and with me, as always, Chris. Welcome.
It's good to be here.
Yeah. That's you keep telling yourself that.
Yeah.
It's this is our bi-weekly torture session for Chris. He has to drive all the way to the studio just to record a podcast episode. No, I think we both have a really good time with these.
It. They're fun.
So, Chris, how are things going? Before we get into financials, how's your week been?
Things are going really well. Bit super busy, but you're going to find out in this episode, April was not like March.
Not like March,
yeah,
which
polar opposites.
Really?
Yeah, just about. So it's pretty interesting to see the difference a month can make.
I'm a little nervous now because it's been, with these financials episodes, it seems like it's been record after record after record, or at least close to it. And if you're telling me it's polar opposites, I'm sweating a little.
There is actually one record in this one, but it stops
Is this like the Happy Gilmore record where he's the only guy who ever took off his skate and tried to stab somebody?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Like, it's
good
a
movie,
record,
by the
technically.
way. Yeah, I need to go watch it.
Oh,
That's such a good movie. It's been a while.
Up. It holds up. Okay, so do you want to get right into that, or
no,
are there other
we had a good story this week. I want to talk a little bit about. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, brings back some of the memories of the days out on the road, even though I'm not the one out on the road, but that had to kind of deal with this. But anyway, so there I was.
The best start of any story.
Yeah, I had drill this last weekend. Nate had drill this last weekend.
This is National Guard.
And so Murphy always pops up at the worst times, right? Mm. And so Nate gets a phone call while he's in the middle of a briefing a bunch of people, and kind of an emergency with Greg. So
Greg, one of the drivers.
Okay. So he, I don't know how the conversation went with Greg, but right after he was done, he like takes a really quick pause in the briefing, kind of sets everybody out on a break, gives me a call, gives me a little bit of information, and asks if I could handle it. And I'm at drill, but I'm in a much more, in a position where I'm able to actually help out for a little bit. So I give Greg a call, kind of get the more details. Anyway, the truck has shut itself down essentially and is given an error code that there's water in the fuel. This is our brand new truck.
And water in the fuel is no joke.
Yeah, water in the fuel is no good. And so he goes and kind of looks at everything, and in the fuel line coming from the tank to the motor, there's actually several fuel filters. The first one is a water separator that helps pull the water, if there's any water, out of the fuel. And it's got this clear case around it, and he can see in it, and there are metal shavings all in the filter, and he sends me a picture of it.
You don't want metal shavings in your filter?
You don't want metal shavings anywhere in an engine. That's usually a really bad sign.
Yeah.
So he sends me a picture of it, and I'm like, well, he tells me about it first, and a little bit later on down the road, he sends me a picture of it, and I'm like, at this point, I'm like, oh crap, this does not sound any good at all. And so to make a long story short, I find, like, I call like 5 or 6 different places. This is Sunday afternoon. Like, nobody wants to answer their phone. No mobile mechanics want to come out. And he's in Utah, but he's about, he's a couple hours outside of Salt Lake City. And so kind of in more of a rural area where, there's not as many mechanics available. But anyway, I end up finding one. The guy goes out, and we call, he fixes the filter, and gets Greg kind of back on the road. And the next day, so he went and picked up some potatoes, goes out and goes through Evanston on his way out of town. And in Evanston, the truck starts giving the same error codes, big issues, water in the fuel. And we're like, okay, crap. And he's looking at the filter, more shavings in the filter. And we're like, and this time he sends me a picture of it. And the shavings are actually pretty big shavings, and don't really know what to think of it. So I call our rep at Freightliner, And the reps, he's all like, go get a PM done on the truck. There's
a PM being
preventive maintenance. So basically your oil change is a little more elaborate than that. And he says a lot of times when water gets to that point, it gets into the manifold. It needs to be blown out. Once that gets taken care of, you should be okay. So he drives all the way back to Salt Lake, does that. And then he also says, as far as the shavings go, he's actually, and this surprised the crap out of me. He's like, yeah, we see that actually pretty often in newer trucks.
What?
Yeah. This is crazy. So if you've this is a warning to anybody who hasn't experienced this and sees it wasn't that big of a deal. He said that oftentimes when they are building the fuel tank, they don't get all the metal shavings that are left over from the build out of the tank.
What?
And so you just suck them through your fuel filter to clean them all up. And so that's all it was. And you can see, I'm going to include a picture of the filter in the show notes. You can go look at it. And you can tell once he says that and you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, that does look exactly like millings.
So some from machining
the fuel tank.
Yeah.
And that's all that was. And we must have got bad fuel because he had actually purchased the fuel right before the first issue happened. And so we're trying to figure out kind of what to do with that at this point. But that made for it took essentially almost, put us behind almost 3 days on that load because of the issues in Utah and then getting it, having it pop back up in Evanston, kind of figuring out what to do from there, bringing the truck all the way back to Salt Lake and then heading all the way back out. So royal pain in the butt, but
yeah, no kidding. I was going to ask you actually, if this is maybe something going on with all these rush orders that are happening on trucks and, all these manufacturers have to get the trucks out quickly.
They're just hurrying.
Are they hurrying? But I mean, from what he said, maybe this isn't so abnormal, but it's also, maybe it's one of those things where, hey, a new truck sounds great, but if you get one that's tried and true and has been around the block a few times,
had the bugs worked out.
Exactly. Yeah. Kind of, maybe more what you're getting.
Yeah. There's always with new trucks, there's always some kind of bugs or some things with it. Like there's a bracket on the exhaust system that there's some kind of defect in how it functions. And I don't know exactly. Nate's kind of handled it. So I've just heard kind of a little bit about it, but basically every new truck that we're getting has to go like immediately have this bracket installed on it so that the exhaust system doesn't fall apart, which we had to happen one time. Really? One of the brand new trucks on the road was a pain in the butt.
Sounds annoying.
It's annoying. Yeah. All part of trucking. Gotta love it.
Well, anything else happening before we get to our main topic?
We did get some good news. Trucks 6 and 7 have both landed in Salt Lake.
Ooh.
So we aren't very excited about having two
brackets
right at the same time. We've pretty sure we've got a driver for truck number 6, but we still don't have one for 7. So we're hoping, and they came in a little bit apart. They were about a week and a half apart. 6 is almost ready to go. In fact, we think we'll get it later on this week.
Yeah.
And then 7, hopefully, it's probably at least a week and a half to 2 weeks out by the time we get it through the Freightliner dealership inspections and get the tri-pack APU installed on it.
Right. Well, I think we better address the question that I'm sure everybody is asking who's listening to this, which is, Chris, why don't you just have Craig drive the truck? He's obviously extremely capable, intelligent, witty, which is important in a truck driver.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the CB talk.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Witty helps. You'd be entertainment for everybody else on the road.
That's right. It's essentially a live rolling podcast on CB radio. That's right. All right. So, Chris, speaking of people who you may be looking for a driver, if anybody is in the Salt Lake area,
shoot me an email, Chris at HaulinAssetsLLC.com.
I was just going to say, people should go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com, where you can contact Chris. You can also just, comment on the episodes. You can also listen to past episodes, and you can find all the documentation for episodes like this one. When we're talking about financials, we're going to be talking about numbers from the profit and loss statement. And so that statement is there for you to view right there at HaulinAssetsLLC.com. Please go check it out. Okay, Chris, are we ready?
Let's
are we
go.
ready
Let's
for
jump into the numbers.
some numbers?
Yeah.
All right, so you said that this was the polar opposite month from March, which was a pretty dang good month.
Yeah, March was our best month ever. It was awesome.
Does that mean that April was terrible?
It was terrible. It was not the worst month ever, but
Okay.
it was definitely not great.
Okay,
It's,
so
it's a pretty drastic change.
let's just go through the numbers then, and then we can kind of back up and talk about what they mean.
Okay.
All right, so total miles run, where did we land on that one?
58,404 miles, which that is our record.
That I was
That
just
is
going to
the
say,
record.
that's a lot of miles.
I can't remember exactly what it was last month. I think it was 57,000 something. So it's only about 1,000 more miles. So not too much more, but still a record nonetheless.
But this sounds like all 5 trucks running the whole month.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So, and how much of that was Deadhead?
3,470, which is 5.9%. So not
Okay.
bad.
All right. Yeah. Within
A little
bounds
higher
of
than last
normalcy.
month, but yeah, very normal.
Okay. So total revenue then, with those 58,000 miles.
$142,489.50.
Which, okay, so contextualize that for me.
That's about $30,000 less than last month.
Holy smokes. Okay, so you ran 1,000 miles more and made $30,000 less.
Yeah.
So that means that our rate per mile is not looking so hot.
Not as good as it has been.
So what did it land at?
$2.44.
Okay,
So
so
about-
it was up close to or
It was
sometimes
over three. It's
three.
been over 3. In fact, we've pushed 350 a handful of times. So this time it was pretty close to, I think, about a 60 cent a mile drop.
So is that because of the rates that you guys are getting, or is it because of all the stuff that's going? Or I guess that is just revenue, right? So we're not even getting into expenses and
Yeah.
new trucks and all that stuff.
So I think there's a couple things going on here with revenue. One, if you remember right, last month we talked a little bit about the timing of when a load gets delivered versus when it gets billed, and we think that worked in our favor last month,
right.
and I think it's worked against us in April.
Right.
So, but that's maybe a $5,000 swing one way or the other.
It doesn't make up
It's
for
not
the
a huge
30,000.
Yeah, so it may be a little bit of that, but it's definitely not the bulk of it. The bulk of it is just they've gone down, and I think it's a combination of things. I think we talked a little bit about this in the last few episodes. You know, you've got China that's basically on lockdown still for COVID, and so you don't have nearly as many imports coming in. That produce hasn't really started to kick off for the year yet, and so you have all these things that are kind of putting pressure on the rates, causing them to go down. And with that being said, they have gone down, but I think they've plateaued and maybe even starting to creep back up a little bit in the last week or so. So we'll kind of see what happens kind of going forward, but I think we're near the bottom.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Wow. Okay. Well, hopefully things start looking up. So, okay. So let's talk then about what other factors went into these drops. Okay. So you've talked about kind of external factors, how much, loads are going for these days, but there's got to be some internal stuff as well. Expenses, repair expenses that you're talking about already earlier in the episode. I am not blind. I drive down the freeway and I see what diesel fuel costs are doing. Do we want to get into some of that stuff?
Let's talk about the net income for the the month first.
Yeah.
And then let's go into that. So $13,750.09 was our net profit. So we
so
made
it was
money.
still positive.
It's still positive, which is good. But I mean, that's a $50,000 drop from last month
over
to this month.
$60K last month.
Yeah. And in reality, if you look at this, this is something we've talked a little bit about in previous episodes, but it's also a concept that's kind of hard to understand. In your profit and loss statement, so in this net income number, it doesn't directly have a truck payment in there. Your interest, so a truck payment is made up of two pieces, right?
Right.
Your interest expense and your principal payment.
Sure.
The principal payment doesn't show up in the profit and loss statement. So, we've got 5 trucks that we're making payments on. The newer trucks, the principal each month is about $3,000, and the older trucks and trailers, it's several $100s, maybe $1,000. And so in reality, of that $13,000, a lot of that is really eaten up in principal. And so what that means is, if you look at it from a cash flow basis, so that's another financial tool report that a lot of people will pull, because cash flow is different than profit and loss.
Right.
And if you look at it from a cash flow basis, we're probably pretty close to kind of break even. Like, we had as much cash going out as we did coming in, even though we show a net income. And that's one thing that can kind of cause companies to go out of business, even if they're making money, because they're not making a ton of money, and what they're making is getting eaten up in things like principal payments on loans.
Yeah. Man. This isn't an accounting podcast, so I don't know if we need to dive deep into it, but I think you've explained to me why principal isn't on the P&L, but that's it's one of those things that people need to be aware of when they're hearing these numbers, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So, all right, Chris. So, realized a profit of $13,000, close to $14,000 for this month on paper, again. So, do we want to get into some of the other P&L numbers?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of the expenses, because there are some expenses in this month's P&L that kind of skewed it, that kind of helped to explain why it's as low as it was.
Okay.
The first one, every quarter you have to pay your quarterly fuel taxes and your Oregon weight distance payment, your New Mexico one, your Kentucky. And so we had about $1,500 in April that it goes under the permit line item that were for Oregon, Kentucky, the IFTA payment, and New Mexico.
And those are all annual?
Quarterly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, quarterly. So it's once a quarter. Okay. So you don't see anything for those in the first 2 months of the quarter, but it actually hits the first month of the quarter for the previous quarter.
Okay.
So that happened in April.
Okay.
That skewed it a little bit. We also check out my nice new collared shirt with the Haulin Assets logo.
I wasn't going to say you're too fancy for this studio, but you might be.
We're too fancy for the not coming in with a t-shirt on. So
meanwhile, we won't mention Craig's sweatpants for today. All right. That's fine.
So we had about $500 in t-shirts between me, Nate, and Chet.
Just the three of you?
Yeah, inflation, man. Those it was like two shirts. Well, Chet and I each got 2 t-shirts, and I think Nate got 4.
So let me ask you a question you might not have wanted to dwell on, but it is a serious question. What's the benefit there for the company, for Haulin Assets? Why are you getting matching t-shirts? Is there a business reason for that?
There's something that kind of spurred it. Nate and I went to the Utah Trucking Association annual convention in May.
Right.
And we just wanted to kind of represent the company and speak, people could see who we are.
Yeah.
It's a good way to network, and
makes a lot of sense. Cool.
Makes us a little bit more visible.
Yeah. Okay. So what else? We talked about fuel. We mentioned it, but we should probably talk about it.
Holy fuel.
What about it, Chris?
It has, we talked a little bit about how, I've been talking, using the percentage method of measuring your fuel expense as a percentage of revenue. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So fuel's been kind of a big topic over the last several financial episodes. And we've noticed fuel prices going up, and the last 2 months, it hasn't had a big impact on that percentage of that ratio of how much our fuel is to our revenue. That is not the case this month.
Right.
So this month April was really the first full month where you had like that big jump of fuel costs because of the, several factors. The one that really kind of caused the big jump, it had been going up steadily for a while, and then all of a sudden there's this big, huge jump because of the war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine. And so April was the first month where we really kind of felt that up for the full month, that sharp increase. And so anyway, we went from in March, $40,000 worth of fuel to April, $50,000 worth of fuel. So you think about it. If we've
watch
got
this, Chris, live math. That's a 20% increase.
Yeah.
That's massive,
good.
Right?
It's huge. Yeah. And so you've got revenue going down and you've got fuel prices going up. And so that's going to have a dramatic impact on that percentage of expense to revenue. So we've been as low as 20% and we've been as high as 25%, but on average we've been close to that 23-24% range.
Yeah.
In April it was 35%.
Oof.
So it was huge, and it's impactful and it's significant. And I think at this point, I really, this is just me and my gut. I think rates have stabilized and will probably go up a little bit and probably help that number. I think that 35%, I think we're probably going to be seeing similar numbers in May, but I think I'm starting to feel a little bit of a shift towards the end of May of prices going up a little bit as far as rates go.
The rates,
and then fuel seems to be kind of stabilizing a little bit, at least not increasing at the same rate that it has been. But it's not going to be able to continue to go the way that it's going, or you're just not going to be able to make any money at all. And which can happen for a short period of time. It has in the past when rates get so bad that like you literally can't make money right. for a short period, but that obviously can't last forever. And I don't think it will. I think we'll still be in a good position, but we're going to have to tighten our belts for probably at least a few months.
Yeah. So does that impact your plans for 2022 as far as adding trucks to the fleet, that sort of thing?
I don't think so. Not at this point. We're not planning on making any changes there. We've kind of built up our little nest egg. We've got our little war chest, so we're feeling pretty good about things. So even if it gets to the point where we're kind of breaking even, or even losing a little money, we can float it for a while. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that my point is with this. One, I'm not a chicken little guy. I don't think the sky is falling. Two, that this just reiterates the importance of being financially responsible with your business. And if you are,
especially when times are good.
Yeah. When times are good, you kind of take in some of the profits and hold it and build your war chest. And then, so when times get bad, you can survive those and be ready to take advantage when the times get good again.
Yeah. Well, here's hoping we don't see any, red numbers in May. hopefully slowing down doesn't become, negative growth.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm excited to see the numbers for May, see kind of what happens, and see if there is the stabilization that I think there's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Chris. Well, I do want to remind everybody to go, because I should ask you first. Do we have an impact tip?
No impact tip this month.
Okay. All right. So I want to remind everybody to go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com, go to Facebook. You can go and comment on this and other episodes in both of those places and tell me how dumb I am for thinking that was a 20% increase when it was 25%. That's fine. Okay, fine. I was an English language major, not a math major. 25%.
It's because you don't like spreadsheets. You can't do math.
That's right.
That's your problem.
It's one of those things, Chris. I wish they would have taught us spreadsheets in school.
You're a nerd, but you're not that kind of nerd.
That's right.
You're a different kind of nerd. Exactly. You're a word nerd, not a numbers nerd.
Word nerd, I like it. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. Let's see, Chris, we're coming in under 25 minutes. Should we do a story?
Do a story.
All right, well, we'll do that after the music. So thanks, everybody, for listening. And if you enjoy stories, I don't know how much of a story this will be, but hang around. See you, Chris.
See you next time.
All right, Chris, I don't really have a ton of stories right now for you. It's one of those things, I mean, you know what this is like. When you're a kind of middle-aged suburban father, couple kids, like you don't accrue the same number of stories as you did.
You're not sowing wild oats? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, whatever.
You're a boring old word nerd?
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. No, but I should... Yeah, I should tell people I've been working on a project. Okay, so anybody who's listened to this show for a while knows that, yeah, I'm a giant nerd. I produce podcasts and YouTube videos, and I kind of sit on my butt and create content all day, every day, right? So I'm a nerd that way. And I'm also, people probably see my man bun on Twitter or on YouTube, and they're like, filthy hipster, blah, blah, blah. Right? But
which I don't blame them.
that's fine. That's judge away. Okay, judge away. But, Chris, I love working with my hands. And I just completed a project here at the house that you walked right under on your way into the studio.
I did. I've enjoyed watching it come about.
Yeah, I love projects. So I decided this year that I would build a pergola. But when I do things, I'm a go big or go home kind of guy with something like this. And so, I could have done a nice little, 6x6, little shady thing, whatever, out in the middle of the yard. No, I created right on the south side of my house, along the path back here to the studio, because this is a separate building from the house. I created a 10-foot by 25-foot pergola so that I could grow hops on it with no purpose other than to have them. I'm not a brewer or anything, but they're fast-growing vines. They're very lush, and they die off in the winter so that, you still get the sunshine when you actually want it, but the shade when you need it. Anyway, so I thought hops would be a cool choice. So I am growing a crap ton of backyard hops, Chris.
Yeah, it was kind of fun because you told me when we recorded the last episode that you had just planted the hops. And so when I came walking through the pergola to record this episode, I was out looking at see if I could see some hops sprouting yet. And lo and behold, there were a handful of little hop sprouts poking through the ground. It's kind of cool.
Yep. Planted 16 of them. I think about a dozen, maybe, give or take, have sprouted. So we'll see how they go for the rest of the year. Anyway, but it's one of those things where I know this is a thing for truckers who they're sitting down all day. They want to engage their mind, right? And so you listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts, and you get into hobbies like CB radio or whatever. It's a similar thing for me where I'm like, look, I've sat on my butt all day. I need to go build something. I just need to do something, get something done. So I guess I'd be curious to hear what hobbies our listeners have cultivated over the years in the truck, right?
Oh, that's a good one.
Or out of the truck.
Yeah.
Whether it's something you do while you're driving, or if it's something where, when you get done, you get home, or you get done with the end of the day.
While you're on a break, sitting at a shippers or receivers, what do you do to
pass the
time? Yeah. Yeah, that's I like that.
So let us know. HaulinAssetsLLC.com. We'd love to hear it. So Chris, until next time, I'll see you later.
See you then.